So
thank you, Evan.
No problem. So let me just say this because I know John's on now. I'm still seeing a stupid transcript thing here. I'll have to shut that off in a second. But anyway, just I guess, just so we can have kind of some order here, it's basically just free form. John was nice enough to offer up some extra time here to stick around with us, follow up after this presentation. I know we did send him a bunch of questions, Mike, that your staff had that we kind of sent his way just as more of a prep, just so you could see some of the questions that are coming or whatever. So I guess if you want, maybe I can moderate it. And if you have a question, just raise your hand and we can kind of fire away. I think would probably be the easiest way. That works for everybody. And yeah, take advantage of Mike being here or of John being here and ask him some questions and we'll go from there. So.
And again, just to kind of lead off a little bit is, time's not unlimited, of course, but if we don't get to things, which I suspect we won't get to all of them, I'm not going anywhere. New Jersey's my favorite state, so Evan and Hillary know where to find me. We work national here, so we can touch back and hit these again. You have a particular project that you dealing with or something, we can hit that again too, especially if it's NRCS related. We're here. Now all work goes through the state engineer, so we support through them. That's how the connection goes. But that's our way our chain of command works with it. Also, just there is a non-trivial chance you will ask me something that I won't have the answer for off the top of my head. And I will tell you that. So just to let you know that if I don't know it, I'll say, oh, well, hell, I'll get back to Hillary or Evan. We'll figure that out at a later time. So anyway, shoot, hit me with it. What do you got?
There was a list, right, by DEP. Maybe we could kick off with that.
Well, maybe I got a question too. I can kick us off because I've seen this, and I think Pat, you and I have talked about this. We've seen it come up in a couple of permit reviews too. So, the idea of native vegetation, right, versus maybe the need for some naturalized vegetation. I think about some of those pictures, John, you were showing of the willows and stuff. And sometimes on these real bad sites, I might spec a Streamco or a, Bankersdorf or one of those more bioengineered. So. And I know you guys are aware of that too, but I don't know. Do you want to speak to that, John? How do you balance kind of some of these naturalized engineered species versus, native species, or, how does that factor into your calculation?
Largely, the projects that I've worked on, we've tried to get local source material and local harvest. And for a couple of reasons, it's cheaper. With it, you start moving things longer distance, you're going to have a higher mortality rate with it, and you kind of head off some of those questions about are you moving species outside of where they ought to, and I'm making air quotes here. You ought to be with it. We generally do not use a lot of the nursery material. Now that's generally most often. There are certainly some exceptions. And the reason is not because we're anti-nursery, it's just a cost aspect with it, and there can be cases where you just don't have stuff to harvest, with it. But if you can link into it, and that's often the advantage of that NRCS has over other entities, is that we tend to know, our area engineers or DCs know who's got a farm pond that's getting clobbered by by willows, and they're really happy to get that crap cleared out. They got some irrigation channel that needs to get moved, so that's where we can start to pull that stuff. And I came from the Corps of Engineers to NRCS in 2000, and Corps of Engineers, we used a lot of nursery-based stock with it. But it was really nice that significantly lower cost when I got to NRCS with that. The exception, of course, is when you're using bulb and burlap, you're using containerized stock, which is largely will be inherently a nursery type material with it. You asked about the Streamco willow. Yeah, I've used with it. There has been some entities, and that went away, because a lot of national laws are locally enforced, but it only wanted plant material that was growing within, and they threw out some number, and this was maybe 15 years ago, so my memory's failing me, but they wanted it harvested within 150 feet of the site. And we had to get an arm wrestling match on that because the damn site was longer than that. You ain't gonna find that, but it's, it works.
Yeah, here most of our stuff comes from. There's like one main nursery in Pennsylvania that has a lot of access to dormant cuttings of different species, and so that tends to be, I think, where a lot of our projects come from, because there's not a lot of nurseries where have dormant cuttings that I found, and we have harvested some on site sometimes. It depends, but
that's good that you've got a good source on that, because and I probably should have added too, is that sometimes contracting with nurseries that aren't used to it, they deliver cuttings that are 9 inches long. And like, what the hell am I going to do with this? I mean, it's not, it's, so if you got an outfit that knows what they're doing and they know how to package and distribute it, yeah, hell, you might be spending a couple bucks a cutting, but yeah, it might be worth it, But realize though that if you are buying exclusively from a nursery and you go to present a talk to somebody in another state that has a lot of farm ponds, irrigation channels, and the like, they may mock you severely behind your back. So.
Good. So I don't know, Mike or Hillary, did you guys? I wasn't checking myself, but do we have that list of questions, or is it you have a couple other questions to start off with?
Yeah, I have a list of questions up. I could just start off with it if
Sure.
good.
Yeah, go for it.
First question. The first question we have is, how do we eliminate the use of hard armoring only techniques? Like, how do we promote using more vegetative techniques and more soil bank stabilization techniques as opposed to just straight hard armoring? Do you have any good ideas for that?
Yeah. It's I would say don't approach it with, don't do hard armoring. View it as a continuum, and I've managed to successfully piss off people on both sides of things, and I think that really would be a better approach, is with it, is not to say no hard armor inherently, because especially in an urbanized environment, there can be things you're going to want to have. I drive over bridges. My grandkids are in the car sometimes. I don't want that bridge falling in, So, hard armor is going to remain part of what we do, but view it as a continuum with it. I think throwing in things like limiting velocities helps people have a little bit more comfort level with it. Some of the earlier pushback that we had in this agency to some of the bioengineering, was on the design center as a stream mechanic civil engineer. And I had some state engineers that just, start talking bioengineering, their heads would spin around, And, so but if we take some of those values and we put a factor of safety at 2, maybe they feel a little more comfortable with it. If we address it in terms of the consequence of failure, what happens if it goes wrong? If the bridge falls in, the house falls in, they're not, they're the ones, Hillary's the one who's going to get the call at 2:00 in the morning. It's not going to be me. I'm in Texas. So, realize that the engineer's got, has that responsibility on that, and try to pick some of those sides. The more you can get demonstrations in that work well, the more comfort level people start having with it, and realizing where it is and where it ain't, with it. And then having that interdisciplinary, interagency approach to the design, letting the fish heads and the eco folks get in the room, with you when you're doing it, and working through, and realize that everybody's got separate levels of expertise, but everybody on that, I think often develops a comfort level going across the board as to what they're looking for. This is strictly my opinion. I think that this era of everything being remote is counter to that. I find that if I can sit in the room with somebody and we can drink a cup of coffee together or eat a donut, we can walk out on the stream bank and spit in the water, that we can come to a conclusion, agreement a lot quicker than I think we can do it verbally or even over the screens. Although these screens are great, and I don't want to get COVID, but I think that's going to involve more work moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's, the hard armoring versus the bio is it comes down to risk, right? And what are we trying to protect? So there's a balance comes in there. Yeah.
When we do a class, we go a huge section on risk and the like with it, and try to get some of that discussion. Is the risk is not just to life and property, it's to the environment. Natural resources in our name. We're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to. It's also to our reputation as an agency and everybody's reputation on that. Everybody looks bad if something fails. With it, it's to the we're not spending our own money, we're spending somebody else's largely. So it sets the whole dang thing, and you start picking those type of projects, that are the low hanging fruit, aspect with it. You're much better off.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. All right, I'm gonna go to the next question. How do you typically determine when hard armoring is necessary?
I spot on what Hillary said. I mean, rewind the tape. It's risk. With it, and I do a lot of bioengineering. I'm proud to have done a lot of bioengineering, but I've done a lot of riprap. I've done a lot of gabions. I've done a lot of these other projects, and I think they are fundamentally good projects depending on what you're dealing with. And I think that riprap and gabions and sheet pile and all sorts of good stuff like that is going to remain part of our toolbox long after I'm dead and gone. But I do think that we can move the needle more and use more of the bio stuff. And but not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Look at the continuum. You got concrete and steel and riprap over here. You got bare earth over here. You got a lot of crap in between. A lot of good stuff. I shouldn't say crap. A lot of good stuff in between here. And let's look at some of these good things.
Well, there's always that combination, using the rock toe and then going up with vegetation. So there's a balance. Yeah.
Do you guys ever think it's a good idea to own just like full hard armor with like riprap?
Sometimes you need it.
Certain situations.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, if you get the, and I should have paid attention to it, Michael. You are DEP. Here I am talking bad about DEP.
Yes.
But get those DEP folks out there and make sure that we understand what the implications are. And sometimes backing off and I used to do a lot more traveling, until I got my current job. But it did seem like about a third of the projects I was trying to convince people to do nothing. That that you had either it was so far gone, I don't think you're going to save the house without doing multi-million-dollar worth of work, or if they had an environmental focus on it, we were going to do more damage to do the work than anything that we were going to try to save with it. And it really seemed to work to get everybody out on that site and kind of work it through in your head, kind of conceptually design it in your head with them, and make sure that they understood what those potential implications were. And I could turn to the state engineer and say, ma'am, with these type of restrictions, I recommend to do nothing. And sometimes they would nod their head and do nothing would be, or sometimes the people go, geez, do we really want to do nothing? Maybe we could put a little bit of octo, maybe we could bend on this, and just talk
Yeah,
to
that's kind of how we address it too. We do it on a case-by-case basis, if like a structure or a utility line is going to be impacted or something like that. That's how we deal with it.
That sewage treatment plant, it's a lot more. That one's easy, but the direct ones, you saw the one with the rock going on up in that picture there, the Massachusetts, if that bank failed and dropped that in, there's a lot of sewage that's going in that river. That's bad ecologically too.
Did that answer your question there, Mike?
Yeah, it definitely did. You're answering multiple questions at once, so I'm just knocking them out on my list.
Yeah.
John, I know we kind of threw a half hour in and we were a little late getting over here from the national call. Are you okay? Do you have a few more minutes yet?
Yeah, we can do a few more minutes on this. Yeah, no worries.
Cool. Yeah, and Mike's going through some questions with DP, but I know we got some other people on the line too. So if you got a question, feel free to raise your hand and we could talk about it for sure.
And also we could, I have time, Evan. If John needs to leave and we want to stay, we can do that too.
Yeah, I do as well. So.
Hey, Hillary, are you sending people to the anybody to the NPEGLA class this year?
We don't have anyone to send yet. We're a slim group right now, but maybe the following year. Yeah.
I was going to just throw out something here, just a point of reference. This was
NPEGLA, just so you know, NPEGLA stands for New Professional Engineers and Geologists. So we're working on that in New Jersey.
This was part of that discussion, and in and of itself, these are more qualitative things, but trying to get people to think about, in terms of costs versus risk. And this is, Hillary knows this. Hell, she just stated a minute ago, but, that, to avoid those high risk, high cost projects, try to focus more on either the lower cost or the lower risk type ones tend to be the type of things that we want to see with it. And that goes for, it's not just bioengineering, but any sort of stream restoration, where you end up, because they send me to do a lot of deficiency studies. NRCS, if something doesn't work out right, we've got to, we've got to explain why it happened. But it's probably the workshop we had. But anyway, a lot of them tend to be, where people have looked to doing things that they probably should try to avoid. And one of the kind of jokey things that I say, but trying to make a point, is don't just do something, stand there. Don't be in that ready, fire, aim. You got to aim before you do the firing part. So anyway.
Got a couple other questions for you. So here's one. What is the best way to determine the most appropriate type of temporary diversion method to be used for ensuring in-stream work is conducted in the dry or dewatered condition?
So you're asking if they had to dig a toe for placing rock in it, what is a good diversion method? Okay.
There's a couple of different ways to skin the cat there, and again, another specific question that I'm going to give a nebulous answer to. If it's something particularly deep, or we're putting something in that's it needs to be in the dry, putting in a riser on a dam, something like that, then we got to dewater the entire thing. We may be putting a cofferdam around it. It may be something of high significance with it. Well, pouring concrete, trimming in concrete might be again, we're talking like risers and stuff like that. For a lot of the stream bank type work with it, especially if it's a smaller channel, we may just dig a trench, we may take a bypass channel with it, a push-up dam with it. We may work entirely in the wet and put a silt fence downstream of it to try to capture the silt there. But these are one of the things that, it need to be interdisciplinary because timing, maybe they've got, the fish heads will tell you, oh, during this time of year, you've got reds coming through there. You got something that if they get silt, it's going to kill them, so don't do it, While another part of the year, it might be just fine, or might be that, putting those type of, silt barriers might be sufficient with it. Maybe something, digging up with it. So it's getting those folks involved early because I have seen projects where the diversion becomes almost the most significant part of the project, in terms of cost, in terms of complexity with it. And in and of itself, that carries a certain degree of risk as well with it. I also have been in situations where we had to walk away because we could not do a diversion that we thought would be safe enough for the contractor and then also permitted by the local DNRs. If we can't come to agreement, and it's and again, I encourage that anytime you're having discussions with it, there will be cases where you won't be able to come to an agreement. And that's good too, shake hands, leave as friends, because sometimes we have different things entities, things that we're representing, and sometimes we come to agreement, sometimes we can't, so.
I have one about do you have any recommendations about what to do after big storms like Tropical Storm Ida, when streams erode and basically carve out an entire new channel alignment? Do we try to stabilize the new channel, or do we try to put that channel back to like pre-storm alignment? Have you ever had any experience with that?
Yeah. A couple things I'll mention is that be cautious that you don't end up, because there is a state on the other coast, on the opposite side of the country, where they have made restrictions rather draconian. For example, that you can't put rock in, period, in one portion of that state unless it's during a exigency or an emergency type situation. So they will have things that are failing ongoing, and what they do is, in reaction to that, they stage rock, they windrow it along the top of the bank and wait for the big storm to occur, and then it all falls in. Yeah, and Hillary's rolling her eyes. I can even see it across. And that is a horribly wasteful thing of rock. It's a mess and a half when it goes in, because when banks are failing, it doesn't just go where it should. It's going all over the place. And so you end up with a god-awful mess. So, and okay, maybe there's a concept, maybe there's some advantages to it, but just cautious on that. But the question though was if you had an avulsion, a sudden movement of the channel, I would suggest that look at it site specific, because maybe it was heading that way anyway. Maybe it had been moved over before, because, Evan has a farm here and I have a farm there, and we decide that that we want to run that creek down right between us. Now, 3 or 4 generations later, our grandkids are having doing something else with that spot. Maybe the water wants to go back where it was before, with it. But there's certainly a lot of situations where we will restore it to what it was pre-storm, even if that is a inherently unstable position or an inherently where it doesn't want to be. Because if the property boundaries are set at centerline, a channel, or there's some sort of infrastructure in there, or there's some sort of political pressure, or bump other things going on, then we have to put it back there. And if that's going to be the case, we are going to need to use more harder type things, and we can make them look eco-friendly, or we can use terms like veins and bendway weirs and stuff like that. But it's fundamentally going to be a hard something.
Yeah, I can maybe add something to that. So I'm thinking about the Capulon Creek in Hunterdon County, where I've done some work over the years. And, John, I don't know how much you're getting impacted in Texas or what your ash level is, out there, but our ash are all dying, right, in the floodplain with emerald ash borer. And so, after Ida in this one particular creek that is a real pretty creek, pretty healthy watershed too, but there's a train track and some other things, some bridges, I think that really put some impact on the stream, but it just ripped in this Ida we had. And on one particular easement site we had a huge log jam, of ash, right? Because they don't hold up very well. So they start breaking down, falling down, uproot, going on. And I think as you see more of these, ash hitting streams and getting caught up, like I could see a lot of avulsions happening in that particular stream. We were close to having one on our easement. We did clean that log jam out under our emergency program, but that was close to causing a big avulsion. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that goes in the future.
Yeah, that's a tough one to be in. Dealt with pine bark beetle a little bit south of you, the same sort of deal with it going on, and that can certainly be. It was what was the guy's name? Pizzuto? I think Pizzuto was fellow. A neat name. Anyway, really, really good fellow. He had done some work out of Delaware, I think it was, talking about the vegetation and defining where the control of vegetation on first, second, third order streams on it, and basically went through a bunch of research to determine what off the top of your head, Evan. That it makes a difference when a bunch of things fall in. But he had numbers and he could do some prediction with it. That was kind of cool. But yeah, you're spot on it. And the removal of a lot of wood has to, of course, be done with caution, because we do in some parts of the country, engineered log jams and issues with it. But in tight urbanized areas, that becomes tough, and we might be able to make use of some of that material, but especially after larger storm events, it needs to be hold on out. We have had some unfortunate situations in NRCS because we have programs to remove it, and that's important to do that after fires and things like that. And roads are going to get torn out. People are going to die if you don't get it out. But oversight on the contract or specification on the contract, you don't want to have a situation where they're going to go where the contractor is going to be encouraged, if they're being paid time and materials without any sort of sideboards, just to tear everything out, and suddenly you've got they've taken a channel that was full of stuff and made it because they're getting paid for all that stuff going out of there. So anyway, maybe statements you're nodding, Evan. You've seen that before.
Well, you're making me think too. We had a WRE easement up in Sussex County, where we did a wetland easement. And, out here in the east, we have that meets and bounds or whatever. It's not all nice and squared off like you guys have out west. And the property line was, back when the farm was created, was the stream, right? And then so when the survey went out and surveyed that easement, you saw where that line is, and then where the stream is now, it's not even close, and I don't even think in that particular case it was man-made. It was just, changes in the watershed and that stream moving. So I always like to tell some of our new planners and stuff, how much, some of these streams have moved a lot, over the last several hundred years or whatever, and yeah, and you can see that with the soil scientists. When they dig down, you can find stream bottom, right? Like way 100 feet away, either way, those streams. So something definitely to consider.
There was some work done, and I see if I can find the paper. I'll send it to you if I can come off the top of my head with it. But it was up through Maryland and New Jersey, looking at a whole pile of the streams of response to mill dams, some of your early industrialization, and that we're seeing channels that are eroding or degrading or incising, and we identify that as, that's because that damn Walmart made a parking lot. Now that's their fault. I'm like, you start going through it, and you mentioned, the soil scientists, well, hold a second. They dig a hole, like, no, the channel was down here. This was more of a braided thing some years ago, and Jebediah old guy, put a dam in here and started running a mill circa 1830, and it filled up, and maybe they added a few things, but he's long gone, his mill's long gone, but now the channel's kind of coming back through, and it's it's not necessarily responding to the last big storm or to the Walmart. It's an evolving deal going on there. And that's the neat thing, Michael. I mean, you tell you folks that we've got a tremendous amount of background in our agency with soil scientists, with the web soil survey, which is just nifty for pictures, but heck, those dirt heads, they know what that stuff means, and they can dig holes and tell you all sorts of interesting things about it. And I don't know how much y'all on staff, but it's really worthwhile getting some of those folks out there because they know some stuff and can really tell you some broad pictures of what you're seeing out there. I got to watch using terms like dirt heads and fish heads. I'm going to make somebody mad.
I like it. Fish heads, dirt heads.
I'm kind of a fish head, and I'm not offended, so that's all. Dirt head might offend some soil scientists, but I think it's not.
What's the joke about soil? Oh, I guess I probably shouldn't do that. But anyway, no, but all seriousness, they've got some really good background in trying to get that. We do that 9 steps of planning, and I know it sometimes sounds a little hokey, but it's really pretty good. What I mean? And whether you got to say, "Oh, I've checked off step number 2," maybe you don't need to do that, but actually kind of going through collecting that information, what you have, you don't end up with that ready, fire, aim. You try to, build a picture. What the heck are we looking at? Where should it ought to go? And maybe the channel had been over there historically, but there'd been a lot of stuff since then. And it may be that stability-wise, it should be where it is now, or maybe it shouldn't be, or maybe there's some political thing and, channel boundaries, you can't move it. And not necessarily political's bad, but, people own property. And if I'm farming 160 acres and you cut 30 acres off and I've got to drive way the heck around to put equipment on that, well, you've just taken it away. It's not economical anymore. Yeah.
Go for it, Mike.
That's those are all the questions that I have.
Okay.
Yeah, if any other DEP people have questions or anything, just feel free to chime in. I appreciate you give us a really good detailed responses.
I liked your point, John, that you made in the presentation, about, and it's something Hiller and I talk about a lot, right? And I've probably evolved over my career too, to just like you see an eroding bank and you want to fix it, and then and then you really got to start stepping back and asking the bigger picture story, what's going on? What are we protecting? What are we trying to do? Why is it eroding? And I just think that that's something over time you kind of learn to look at and evolve. And, because a lot of times bioengineering or hard armor, I mean, this stuff can get really expensive and there's just a lot of questions to ask.
I'd add too that this goes for DNR, for DEP, but certainly with NRCS, is that when we touch something as federal, whether state or national, the public views us as owning it and being responsible for it. So, if we can't do it right, we often do need to walk away. And, so that's another, I used to joke, it was only half a joke saying I was spending third and fourth of my time convincing people to do nothing. One of the big ones was if you did not have landowners that agreed to work with you. And I could have one landowner here that wanted help, who'd be a great person to work with. And yeah, we could solve that issue or we could address it. But to adequately address it, we also needed to make sure it was keyed in upstream. And we needed to address something on the opposite bank because potentially we could be adding stress over there. And if those landowners didn't want to play, and we can't make them, then sorry, first landowner, we really need to tell them we can't help you, or we need to do something so soft touch, hey, we can give you some CTA up. We can tell you about putting in live stakes and just walk away, with it, because if we don't address those other issues, they're going to have problems and they're going to potentially blame us, the feds, for causing their issues. And one of the ways to get yourself out of business of doing any of these things is to wind up getting blamed for causing a problem. So.
Yeah, definitely. One of the common things that we see is when they hard armor one side of the stream, the water starts bouncing off that hard armoring and eroding the other side of the stream.
Yeah.
So we typically
and that's a spot on thing. And so often, way I got into bioengineering, we're talking 30 years ago, was that type of stuff to address. And we still do it. If we've got a hard armor to protect the sewage line from falling in or something, well, shit, to do that, we also need to protect opposite sides with it. Maybe that I can transition out into something, veggie with it. Same thing if it's a larger bank, we got to transition out. Having abrupt ends to hard armor tend to cause problems. And while we engineers may want to pave the planet, it's just not economical at this point. So, we got to transition and think how we're going to do that. And whether, and again, site dependent, the resources that we're dealing with, the site conditions, 9 steps of planet. It may be that we transition out just to bio, maybe we transition out through a deflector, a kicker. Maybe there's other things that we transition out too. But just, the days of going rip-rap here, stop, end, be cautious.
Those are really good points. And it's something that's something that too, we're very reactionary often. When there's a storm event, the public calls and they want stuff fixed and they want this happen and we need to fix it. So piecemealing things like that are often happen. So we have to be cognizant of it because we definitely can't push the problem downstream or upstream. So very good points. Appreciate it.
That is why it has been documented that state engineers get prematurely gray hair during EWP projects because they get hit with those things because it's you want to react right away and they're like, I need to think about this a little bit longer. It needs to be a little bit wider. So they can get beaten on from all sides. So when next y'all have an EWP thing, you need to think kind thoughts about Hillary because
yeah. Well, think about them now because we're going through it right now. So,
yeah, big EWP this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was only, neighboring states. I won't mention any names, but you still hear these stories in some states where they're putting dozers right down the stream and just straightening it up, man, and doing things like that. And it's crazy, but
and
I don't know.
And I would argue that I'll argue that in some cases that is appropriate. If you've got a big log jam in front of the 6-box culverts and school buses go across that, dadgummit, but there's going to be a consequence to doing that. So you might want to be prepared for the consequence, and ecologically and physically, there's going to be a consequence, but sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah. What are your options? Not
Yeah. Don't use the bridge. Okay, well, how are they gonna do it? But yeah, so watch out, man. Hillary, I was gonna say that Matt, your counterpart in New Hampshire is looking toward potentially trying to get a class, a workshop set up either in the fall or the spring on bioengineering, and what we would do is do one of those classes where you do a day of lecture, yak, and then physically get out there and do a project, do a hands-on construction thing. And that is often, maybe haven't seen it before and not a problem, but some people are new, you physically get in it's able to design better if you've actually gone and done the installation. It also, if you include some of the counterparts that you regularly work with, whether Corps or the DEP folks or the like, that it's so that you have a common point of reference to talk. It's kind of a group tightening thing because fundamentally, it's fundamentally all our agencies are after the same thing. We want protection of people. We want protection of the environment. We have different programs, but we've all basically we're all public servants. None of us have stock and riprap and gabions. We just want to use these things, and so we want to use what's appropriate where it's appropriate. So anyway, but I thought that you might touch base with Matt if you want to.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I'll reach out to him and do that.
Yeah, before you jumped on, John, I think we were kind of saying, and we've talked about this too. I definitely think this is in our wheelhouse too in the future here. I'd love to see something in New Jersey. You know, we're bringing on a bunch of new staff and a bunch. I know DP, you guys have got picked up a lot of people too, and new staff, and some of our other partners too. So it would be a class that's on my radar as SRC to work with Hillary on and see if we could get New Jersey, not too distant future here.
And for us coming out of Fort Worth providing this type of support. I mean, I've got a good travel budget, so I mean, to us it doesn't matter where the hell we go as long as there's good barbecue to eat in the afternoons and evenings. But But we do like to, if we're doing a class in areas, to see if we can surround states. So it all depends on who they got, and then we want to pick a demo that if you're doing a demo, you want the demo to work.
Project.
You want to think we can demo a lot of different things to make it interesting. So sometimes you've got good sites and sometimes you don't, and you don't want to, you also, if you're bringing people in, you need to design it ahead of time. You need to make sure you've worked through all your permits. It needs to be a safe site. It needs to be parking. You're going to have people that maybe are more office oriented, so you don't want any contamination of the water because they might not realize. There's a bunch of little things you got to think about. But it's all doable, and NRCS people are used to dealing with that because we try to avoid killing our employees as much as possible. So.
All right. Do we have any more questions? Good questions. Anyone from NRCS? Because we've been pretty quiet.
Brittany asked, can I share? I was just checking the chat. I haven't been looking at the chat. So Evan, can you share the name of that company? Yeah, and I will. Maybe I'll email you, Brittany, because I don't want to be promoting broadly, one particular nursery, but we could talk a little bit about that for sure. And then, Morgan Deventer. Yep.
Yeah, and I think Ty had a question during the larger presentation. Ty, do you want to voice that question again?
Hello, everyone. I was not expecting to be called out, so thank you, Hillary. I was just asking, I know in one of the last slides, it was mentioned that, it is natural for rivers to do this kind of erosion in banks. So once, you implement bioengineering, once you do all the practices in the area, after, do you recommend after a certain amount of time to go back and reevaluate the area?
Yes.
And if so,
yes.
I know it varies case by case, but what would you recommend a good time frame to do so?
Okay. Are you NRCS?
I am NRCS, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we do have requirements we're supposed to monitor things, but we do not do a good job of it. So, whoops, Michael's on the phone still, so he's I'm letting him know our dirty laundry. We don't. We should be doing it, but we don't. We tend to only go out when there's a problem, and it's because just like a lot of entities, we're overworked and understaffed. We got some things with it. But
we do provide operation and maintenance plans to the owners, and
Yeah.
they have a responsibility and a duty to operate and maintain what we provided technical and financial assistance on. So and we do suggest that they contact us if they have questions and need advice and help moving forward. So.
And that's spot on. And what lead to it is that we tell them what they ought to do, but there's always exceptions of what it is, and people usually don't look to people don't change the oil in their car when they should. They wait till there's a problem. And if you are an area engineer or an area DC, being able to touch base with your people periodically is a good idea, because again, we don't tend to do that as well as we should. Some people do it better than others. but making sure that we're looking at things, and especially after big events. And that's a neat thing about our agency, is that we've got people in every area. There's been a big storm, hey, Evan, that project we did on your farm, 4 years ago, how the hell does it look? It's rained like hell last night, didn't it? And well, Evan will go, crap, I haven't been out there in 6 months. I don't know. You want to meet me? We'll go take a look. And if you do that, you will not only help your landowners, your customers with it, you'll start building up some of your own knowledge, going out there and seeing these things, because everything looks good until you get a big storm event, so I really encourage you to take a look at the other aspect of putting that comment in there. Is if you go out and you have somebody tell you, I want to do this project and I want it never to move ever again. I want it to be fixed permanent, and it never to have any more erosion. Unless you are very close to retirement, you probably ought to decline that project, because it is a stream project. It's going to move. So, laying people, being honest, straight out with it, that, natural things move, and the fish heads, the ecologists, they'll tell you it's a good thing. We need to see a little bit. We could put everything in a concrete channel, and even that's going to move eventually. But that's not. And there's certainly purposes and situations where concrete channels or big pipes are going to be important. But there's an ecological consequence to that too. Yeah. So that was the large part, the caution of trying to put that there. So great question.
Thanks, Ty.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it too, just my perspective as SRC. I was biologist prior to this, and you're right, John. We don't have the time always to follow up on these projects that we'd like to, but it is so important to try to, right? Because the amount of what you learn, when you go back to a project you did 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, not only that, just a sense of pride when you drive by and you see, hey, I fixed this, and it looks good. But it is almost unfathomable. I think about some of the stream projects I've done, and you go back 5 years later, and I mean, it's like a completely different site. Like you showed in your pictures, the willows have taken, the dogwoods have taken, the trees you planted are 20 feet tall. It's just unbelievable, and you got to try your best to make the time to at least get a little bit of that in, so you can, because it will make you a better planner, I will say for sure.
And one of the cautions, Todd, to say when you get into doing the stream restoration, the bioengineering, that we all like to go look at the work we've done. And I can go back and look at dams and risers and flip buckets and concrete, and I can point to them and I can beat my chest and say, look what I have wrought, because they're still there. Now, if I do the bioengineering project or stream restoration project, if I go back there and I'm like, oh, crap, is this where it is? I think so. Then I've been successful, but that's kind of hard, because if I can't tell where it is, I've done a really good job.
Yeah, what's this big weed doing over here?
And sometimes it didn't go well, and you'll learn then too, right?
Yeah, no, and it's good. It's good to be able to go back and check it out, and it's also, I mean, hey, we're public servants. You reach out to you SLC, you reach out to your customers and you care about them, and don't wait until they said I lost my tractor into the drink, because maybe it's a deficiency. Maybe we learned something. Maybe we need to change something. Maybe it's just, hey, dude, you got a big storm. Let's see if we can put you back in the program again. It's good stuff. But yeah, let us know if y'all want to do a class. If we want to try to split between it, maybe we want to do something separate. And when we talk about it, we may want to try to pull. And often some of these ones I have found, again, we used to do like about 3 or 4 of these things a year for right up until COVID. We would try to bring in some of our partners, whether the Corps or the DEPs, to make a presentation. If there was like a Friends of the Salmon of shad, I guess in y'all's area, but make a presentation. We would try to get, if there was a local nursery that was particularly active, to get them to do something, and we had to kind of work it through and make sure that we weren't giving them favorable treatment, and we would make sure they weren't going to say the only way to do things is hire us, and then we'd let them know that if Fripp's speaking, he's going to start saying, he's going to talk about the advantages of local harvest, so don't throw a rock at him for saying that. But sometimes that can be really good at making those type of connections. It can give a really stronger class or presentation thing. So.
Yeah, and I guess I'll put a plug in on my staff too. You had mentioned PMC, so for the DP folks, if you didn't know, we do have our own PMC, Plant Material Center. Yep, down in Cape May. Chris Miller heads that up. I know, John, you've worked with Chris over the years, and Chris is a great plant guy, and he's always willing to help. So even if you guys had questions DEP wise, he's pretty amazing. We just redid our vegetative planting guide that we can find on our tech guide. And Michael, if you're interested, I can send you a link to that. But Chris was instrumental in that, so we have a really nice new planting guide that addresses stream stuff and a bunch of other stuff, and it's good.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that because we had Chris teaching a class with us a few years back, maybe a decade ago, and I believe they've got a water jet stinger there if you were doing a class. Because he had one of those would be worthwhile. He's done a lot of that type of work, and he speaks the language. He walks the walk, talks the talk. He outstanding fellow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Chris is great. So, good.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could send me that guide and maybe give me his contact info too.
Yeah, sure. You got to do that.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Anything else or?
Well, pulled an extra half hour out of you, man. Do we have to pay extra for that, me and Hillary, that you stuck around for another half hour?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to hop up getting some another things I need to jump to.
Okay, yeah.
But you let me know if you got any other questions come up. I'm a phone call away. It can be semi-formal like this. It can be ad hoc. We're here to help. And hell, you want to get one of our folks up there on site to look at something in particular, Hillary, we're here to help. We're here to help. So.
I know you've been a big help so far, so I appreciate it. And thanks so much, John.
Thanks, John. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Yep.
John.
Talk to y'all later.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, guys. Mike and Patrick, are you okay? And
Yeah, we're good. I just want to say thanks. Thank you guys for setting this up. It was good. It's good to keep the dialogue going, bounce things off each other, and
yeah. Okay.
collaborate for sure.
Yep. Okay. Well, take care, everyone.
Jokes didn't offend anybody. So.
Nah, you're good, John. You're good. Yeah, thanks, Pat and Mike too, and your guys' staff. So this was good to get together and do this a little bit and work together. So yeah, I'll send you those links, Mike, for sure. And you guys know where to find me too, right? And Hillary. So yeah.
All right, great. Sounds good.
Got it. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.